Hi everyone, I'm your host, Jacqueline Howard. Thank you for joining us for today's virtual field trip, made possible with generous support from Lowe's. Borneo, it's an incredibly beautiful place to see. It's also a really important place. In fact, all rainforests are. Rainforests are packed full of trees, and those trees take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen. And oxygen is what all animals breathe to stay alive. That includes us humans too. Now, because rainforests breathe life into the entire planet, they're often called the lungs of the world. Did you know that one large tree can provide a day's supply of oxygen for 4 people? Pretty amazing, right? So even though rainforests might be really far away from where you live, you still benefit from them. Rainforests help keep our planet healthy and productive. Now let's take a few minutes to talk about sound. Think about all the sounds you hear on a daily basis. The birds chirping on your way to school, your dog barking in the backyard, and your friends chatting in the halls. There's sound everywhere, isn't there? Sometimes when we want to listen carefully to something that we know is important, we close our eyes so we can really concentrate. Have you ever done that? I have. And that's part of what we're going to do on today's field trip. We'll show you how scientists listen carefully to the sounds of the rainforest ecosystem of Borneo to find out how many different animal species live there. It's so cool. An ecosystem is a community of living organisms, like birds or orangutans, in combination with the non-living components of their environment, like air and water. When they all work together, you have an ecosystem. Since Borneo is such a biodiverse place, meaning there are tons of different animal and plant species that call the island home, it's nearly impossible to see all of the animals with your own eyes. And that's why scientists listen. So where in the world is Borneo? Let's take a closer look. We're headed all the way to Southeast Asia to see this magnificent island. Borneo looks pretty amazing, doesn't it? It's so incredible. Now let's talk to someone who's actually been there. Joining us live is science writer Justine Hausheer, who is fresh with mosquito bites from her last trip to Borneo. Welcome, Justine. I'm so excited that you're here. Can you tell us about your background and your experience in Borneo?
Thanks, Jacqueline, and hello to all of our viewers out there. I am so thrilled to be here today to share my experience in Borneo with you. I have always loved science. Growing up, I spent every afternoon catching fish, turtles, and snakes in the lake behind my house. And when my brother and I would go hiking, we would identify different birds and collect rocks and fossils. I also loved reading science books and National Geographic articles. Eventually, I graduated from Princeton University with an English degree, but I knew I didn't want to stop there. I loved science too much. So I decided to earn another degree in science journalism, and now I work as a science writer for the Nature Conservancy. It's a pretty awesome job. The Nature Conservancy has more than 600 scientists that do research to help us protect nature, and it's my job to write about that research. Sometimes I get to join scientists in the field, which is why I was able to visit Borneo. I know that science scares a lot of people, but it doesn't have to be that way. Picture a scientist. You're probably thinking of an old man with glasses and a lab coat who's dissecting a frog or pouring weird bubbling liquids into beakers. But that's not all scientists. Anyone can become a scientist, and a lot of them don't work in a lab in a white coat. Scientists help save endangered animals, like orangutans, or they can help us decide which places in nature are the most important to protect. I'm so excited to be here today to talk to you all about Borneo, because I was there not too long ago, working with scientists right in the rainforest. It was a lot of hard work, but I got to witness their research firsthand, and it was absolutely amazing.
Thanks, Justine. That sounds amazing. All right, ready to have some fun? If you've joined us for a virtual field trip in the past, you'll remember a game we played called Nature Spy. Well, this time, there's a twist. Since we'll be talking so much about sound today, we want all of you to listen to the rainforest along with our scientists. We sent your teacher a list of animals that you will hear during today's field trip. You might not see them, but that doesn't mean they're not there. Pay close attention. In a little bit, we will be asking you to look at your worksheets as we play some fun animal sounds for you. Then you'll have to match the sound with the photo. Now, let's take a minute to introduce a classroom of 6th grade students who are joining us all the way from Patterson International Elementary School in Lakewood, Colorado. They're going to be helping us out and asking some questions of their own during our trip. Hey, classroom! I'm so excited that they could join us, and thanks everyone. This is going to be a lot of fun today. Now it's time to visit Borneo. Justine, can you tell us about Borneo? What does it look like, and do people live there?
Sure. Borneo is the 3rd largest island in the world, behind Greenland and New Guinea. It's just a little bit bigger than Texas, to put it in perspective. Now let's focus on Indonesia. It's the world's largest island country with more than 13,000 islands, and Borneo is just one of them. Borneo is surrounded by 4 different seas: the South China Sea, the Sulu Sea, the Celebes Sea, and the Java Sea, and the equator passes right through it. The island of Borneo is actually split between 3 countries: Indonesia, Malaysia, and the tiny island nation of Brunei. The Indonesian part of Borneo is called Kalimantan. This is where we're going to start our field trip, at a remote research station in the heart of the Wahea Protected Forest in East Kalimantan, Indonesian Borneo.
That's awesome, and most people probably were unaware that Borneo has 3 different countries on it. Pretty cool. So what can you tell us about the people that live there?
When some people hear the name Borneo, it conjures up the idea that it's a remote jungle island with few people. And while that's true in some parts, a lot of people live in Borneo, around 19 million total. In East Kalimantan, there are a mixture of people from all over Indonesia, as well as indigenous people, meaning the native people who live on the island. The indigenous people of Borneo are collectively called the Dayak. Some of the Dayak people still use the forest to hunt for food, gather herbs and medicine, and to get clean water. But for the most part, they live in houses similar to mine and yours, and they get around on scooters or in cars.
It sounds like a really cool and distinctive place, and it makes sense that so many animals live on the island since it's so big and covered with dense forests. We talked a little bit about the biodiversity of Borneo, but Justine, can you explain what biodiversity means and why is it so important?
That's a really good question, Jacqueline. Let's pretend we went out and did a study of insects in 2 different locations, and in the first location, we counted them up, and this is what we saw. Now in the second location, we did the same thing, but we saw this. Now let's look at both locations side by side and see if our students can tell how they're similar and how they're different.
That sounds really great. Let's visit our classroom and see what Miss Espinal's students think. Can you guys tell us how you think these 2 locations are the same and different?
Hi, I'm Bernice, and I noticed that there are the same amount of insects in each photo.
Hi, I'm Austin, and even though there are the same amount of insects in both, in the second location there are more ants than other bugs.
You guys are absolutely right. When you find an area that has a lot of variety, like location 1, We call that biodiversity. In the first location, there are beetles and wasps and ants and a lot of other things, and that's a great example of biodiversity. In fact, the rainforests of Borneo are so diverse that you can find as many as 1,000 different types of insects on just one tree.
So that means biodiversity isn't just about the quantity or number of living things, it's also about the variety of living things. Justine, how does biodiversity impact nature, and why do we need to measure it?
So scientists want to know how many plants and animals live in an area so they can help protect nature. It's really important that we protect nature, not just because it's beautiful, but also because it provides all kinds of things that we need, like clean water, clean air, food, and energy, just to name a few. Biodiversity is important when we think about the specific places that need protection, because the more biodiverse a place is, the more services it provides for us and all of the other living creatures on the planet.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So where exactly does sound come into the picture?
Well, you've seen what the forest looks like. It's really difficult to walk through because of all the trees and muddy ground. There are no trails, so you have to cut your way through the vegetation, and sometimes the hills are so steep that you have to use the trees and vines to help pull yourself up. Since it's so dense, there are tons of places where animals can hide, and it would be tremendously difficult for scientists to see all of the animals with their own eyes. There's just so much vegetation covering things up. So counting species would take so much time and a lot of money. That's why scientists use sound to hear the animals. Let's stop for a moment and listen to what an actual recording of a rainforest in Borneo sounds like. There are many animals that make up those sounds, and soon we'll talk about how scientists use these recordings to learn about the animals in the rainforest. At the end of the day, scientists are trying to figure out the best way to manage the forest landscape, meaning they want to conserve the forest and the species that live there while still finding the right balance for people who are looking to harvest trees for paper and wood, and for those who want to clear the land and use it for growing food or producing palm oil.
Most of us have probably heard about logging for paper and wood before, but Justine, can you explain and tell us a little more about palm oil?
Sure. Palm oil is a type of edible vegetable oil that's created from fruit grown on the African oil palm tree. The oil palm thrives in places like Borneo, and because it's in so many everyday items and in such high demand, people are clearing rainforests in order to grow oil palm. That has impacts on the things that call the rainforest home, but it impacts us as well. Rainforests around the world produce more than 20% of Earth's oxygen, so rainforests serve a very important role on this planet.
So we know that protecting biodiversity is important, and we know that people need resources like wood, paper, and cooking oil to live. And that's where sound comes back into the picture. So let's talk about how listening to the sounds of the forest helps with both things. What do you think, Justine?
In order to figure out where things live in the rainforest, scientists use something called an acoustic survey. They strap acoustic recorders to trees throughout the forest at various locations, and those capture 24 hours of sound. By understanding how many and what kinds of species live there, scientists can help make decisions about the best way to protect and use the land. And that's really good for us too. The reason the recorders are placed in the forest for a full 24 hours is so the scientists can hear the forest waking up, going about its day, and then going to sleep. And that's really just a second wake up for all of the animals that are nocturnal, because they're just starting their day. Scientists then take that audio recording and convert it into a false color spectrogram, which is a multicolored graph that helps them visualize the sounds so they can determine the different animal species, like birds, monkeys, insects, and even mammals.
That's really fascinating. But how does the false color spectrogram really identify the animals?
So think about it this way. When you and I talk to each other, we're speaking at the same frequency. An easy way to understand frequency is to think about how often something happens and how high or low our voices might be. So my voice might have a slower and lower frequency than a bird's voice. All people speak in a similar frequency, which is why it would be difficult for us to understand and hear one another if there were other people close by talking at the same time in a really crowded room. Our messages would just get jumbled. This is the same way that animals communicate. In the next video, we're going to see how one frog talks to another frog at the same frequency, and how one bird talks to another bird at a different frequency from the frog.
Wow, that was really cool. I liked how you could hear the individual animal sounds, but when they're all together, it becomes the chorus of the rainforest. So basically, over time, animals have evolved to communicate at their own frequencies. This is why they're able to hear each other through all the other sounds in the rainforest. And Borneo has so many animals. Justine, can you show us what that rainforest chorus looks like on false color spectrogram?
Absolutely. So here's a false color spectrogram from our work in Borneo. At the top of the graph, where the frequencies are shown, you can see the insects being loud and active early in the morning. The lower frequencies are shown on the bottom of the graph. And as we move from left to right, that indicates time passing. Once we get to the afternoon, you can see the birds starting to chatter at a lower frequency than the insects. And then at nighttime, the insects are really, really loud, which is really fun to try to sleep through when you're in the forest. And then some frogs start chirping too. You can also see that our recorders picked up the sounds of rain, which fills all of the frequencies. And this false color spectrogram only shows frequencies that we can hear. There are a lot more frequencies not shown on the graph that are out of the human range of hearing, like ultrasonic bats. It's pretty fascinating to think that animals might be communicating and we can't even hear them.
That is really fascinating. And it looks like there were tons of animals recorded in Borneo. So does that mean that the forest is healthy?
It does. Think about Borneo as a symphony. To make all the sounds in the song, there have to be violins, flutes, and horns. There's a lot of variety. Now pretend we take away everything except the flutes. This would be an unhealthy forest because there isn't as much variety or biodiversity. So over time, animals have evolved to communicate at their own frequency. Some are higher and some are lower. But in simple terms, it means that all animals, birds, frogs, insects, and mammals communicate in their own way.
Now, how does a forest become unhealthy?
Think about it this way. If a certain plant species is removed from the forest, then the insects that eat that plant species disappear too. And the animals that eat those insects also disappear. So while there still might be a lot of sound in that forest, there won't be as many types of species because they can't survive without food. Using audio recorders saves scientists so much time and money. It would take years and years to see and identify all of the animals. Monitoring sound is a much faster and more reliable process. Plus, it's less expensive. And the best part, other scientists can then use this audio data for other things. It's a permanent record of what the forest sounded like at that point in time. So in 10 years, another scientist can come back and take another recording and compare the two. This type of science is called bioacoustics, and it's really innovative. It's just the beginning of a huge wave of interest and use of acoustic technology in conservation. We expect to see a lot of this in the future.
Yeah, those are some really exciting developments. My hunch is that it sparked a few questions from our listeners out there. We're going to check in with our classroom in Colorado, and then we'll come back and answer a few of your questions. Hi, students in Colorado. We heard that you've been studying rainforest this year, and I'd love to hear some facts from you guys. What do you have to share with us?
Hi, my name is Locke, and the island of Borneo was likely made by a volcanic eruption under the sea, and eventually the Borneo rainforest grew on it because of the volcanic soil.
Hi, I'm Paris, and the rainforest in Borneo is one of the oldest in the world. It is estimated to be 130 million years old.
Hi, my name is Jeremiah, and during the last 10 years, 300 new species have been found in Borneo, and it is home to around 222 types of mammals, 44 of which can only be found in Borneo.
Wow, that is really cool, and those are some awesome facts. Thank you so much, classroom, for sharing with us. That was incredible. And it looks like that some of the students watching have a few questions of their own. So I want to start with student Ava. Justine, Ava wants to know, what is the temperature in the rainforest like?
It's really, really hot, especially during the day. When we're hiking around through the forest, you are absolutely dripping with sweat and it's really warm. It also cools down a little bit at night, but it's still pretty hot, especially because when we're either camping or staying in some small buildings, there's no air conditioning.
And we have a question from a student in Ohio who wants to know, how many species are there in Borneo? And I'm sure there are many.
There are absolutely hundreds and thousands of species in Borneo. I really love birds, and I can tell you that there are probably 600 to 700 different bird species alone. And the great thing about species in Borneo and other rainforests too is that many of them are endemic, meaning they're only found in that one country or that one type of forest. And that's why places like Borneo are so special, because those species aren't found anywhere else.
Yeah, that is really incredible. And I also have a question from a student who wants to know, out of all of the species, which is your favorite?
My favorite species that I actually got to see in Borneo are hornbills, which we're going to learn a little bit about later. They're about 8 to 9 different types of birds, and they're absolutely huge, kind of like the size of a big hawk, and they have really cool bills and really weird feathers on their heads, and they're all different colors.
And we also talked about how each of the species communicate at different frequencies. One student wants to know, why do the animals communicate in this way, and why are there different frequencies that we see in here?
So animals communicate at different frequencies because they want to hear one another. One bird wants to be able to talk to another bird of the same species, so they communicate at the same frequency. That way they can hear each other. Other animals are communicating at different frequencies so they can hear each other too. And in all of the noise that you're hearing in the rainforest, that helps them pick out that one other animal out of hundreds and hundreds they can hear that they want to talk to.
And our last question comes from a student named Nisa, and she wants to know, what made you want to go into the science field?
I loved science, as I told you, ever since I was a little kid, but I didn't want to specialize in one thing. A lot of scientists focus on one type of science, and I just loved everything, and I wanted to see all different parts of the world. And I was also really good at writing. And that's when I realized, by being a science writer and writing about science, I can write about science all over the world and all different types of science. My favorite part is that I'm always a student. I always learn with every new thing I write about a different place or animal or a different way that scientists are helping protect nature. And that's why I wanted to be a science writer.
That's incredible. I know many scientists say that while they are, experts in their fields, they're still learning, and there's so much out there for us left to explore and to discover. So that's really fascinating. Thanks, Justine. And thanks to all of you students for sending in your questions. And thank you, Classroom, for those incredible facts. Keep those questions in mind and keep them coming as we continue on our journey here with our virtual field trip. And I know that we've heard so much today about how there are so many animal species on Borneo. Justine, can you tell us a little more about what kinds of animals live there? I know we touched on that a little bit, but can you tell us more?
Absolutely. So in Borneo, you'll find mammals like the Sunda clouded leopard, which is the largest cat in Borneo. And its markings are irregularly shaped ovals that resemble clouds, which is how the cat got its name. You can also find proboscis monkeys and gibbons. When I was in Borneo, we heard gibbons every morning in the logging camps. And while gibbons more closely resemble a monkey because they're small, gibbons are actually closely related to the great apes, which include gorillas, chimpanzees, and orangutans. Like apes, gibbons don't have tails. They're master movers. They can swing from branch to branch for distances up to 50 feet and speeds as high as 34 miles an hour. They can also make leaps up to 26 feet. It's really a sight to see. Borneo is also home to the sun bear. It's the smallest member of the bear family and eats insects and fruits. And let's not forget about the birds, my favorite. You'll find the black and red broadbill, the red-bearded bee-eater, and the Asian paradise flycatcher. And then my favorite, the rhinoceros hornbill. This bird is really, really cool looking. Its horned bill looks just like the horn on a rhinoceros, hence its name. The large size of its bill helps amplify or makes its call really loud so it can be heard all throughout the dense forest.
Those are some really cool animals, and I can see how the Sunda clouded leopard got its name. Those are some really interesting markings. Okay, students, are you ready to have some fun? It's time to focus on those Nature Spy worksheets. In just a minute, we're going to play 4 different animal sounds, and you'll have to guess which animal is making what sound. When you hear the sound, guess which animal it is, and write the sound number on your worksheet right here. This is going to be fun. Are you ready? Here we go. So do you think you got all 4 sounds right? Some of them were really tricky. It's kind of funny how difficult it can be to identify something when you're only hearing the sound. We're so used to seeing animals in person, so that's why this was an added challenge. But let's see what those answers are. Are you ready to find out? Here they are.
That last sound you heard was an orangutan. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? That's probably not what you thought an orangutan would sound like. This species communicates with both verbal and nonverbal methods. They are so incredibly important to the rainforest. Did you know that orangutans share 97% of our DNA? It's true, they're one of our closest living relatives. Adult male orangutans can weigh up to 200 pounds, and many males and females live for about 45 years. Orangutans are only found in the forests of Borneo and Sumatra, and these forests provide them a home, and the orangutans do something important for the forest too. One reason they're so important is that they help disperse seeds. Orangutans eat over 400 types of fruit, along with other items like bark, leaves, and termites. And then when they travel through the forest, they poop and deposit those seeds. It might sound gross, but it's really important for the forest. Orangutans also bend tree branches in order to make nests in the forest canopy. This helps create an opening for light to come down to the forest floor and helps young tree seedlings grow. In a nutshell, orangutans keep the forest really healthy. But orangutans need large forested areas for their habitat, which is one of the reasons they inhabit Borneo. But unfortunately, they're now critically endangered because these habitats are becoming smaller and more disconnected as people clear forests for mining and to create palm oil and timber plantations. This is why the research that scientists are doing in Borneo is so important. They need to determine just how the orangutans and other animals are using the forest so we can protect the most important parts of the forest and plan to put palm oil plantations somewhere else.
They really do sound important to Borneo. So essentially the forest and the orangutans help each other survive.
Exactly. Right now, there are as few as 45,000 orangutans left in the world, and a majority of them live in Borneo. Bornean orangutan populations have decreased by 60% since 1950, and an additional loss of 22% is predicted by 2025. So it's great that the Borneo Orangutan Survival Foundation is helping to rehabilitate and relocate orangutans to help halt this decline. Their staff of 400 people is currently taking care of almost 750 orangutans.
That's so wonderful, and it's great to see so many people coming together to help protect this important and beautiful species. Now, you talked about how orangutans eat more than 400 types of fruits. That's a lot. What other flowers and vegetation can you find in Borneo?
Borneo has nearly 11,000 species of flowering plants, or flora. Borneo is also home to the largest flower in the world, called the monster flower. It's a 5-petaled flower that can be over 39 inches in diameter, and it weighs up to 22 pounds. Borneo also has massive stands of teak, oak, conifers, and members of the dipterocarp family. That's the main type of tree here and the only tree family used for logging. Dipterocarps are cool because they have helicopter-like seeds. You'll also find the honey tree, which is a species protected from logging because of an interesting feature. Wild honeybees nest in these trees and people harvest the honey and sell it. It's one of the tallest trees in the Bornean rainforest and it has smooth bark that makes it really hard for animals like the sun bear and the orangutan to climb up and take the honey.
That's incredible. And did you see how massive that monster flower is? It must be incredible to see it in person. It's so cool. Now I see some more questions popping up on our Q&A, and we'll take a couple of minutes to answer a few. Justine, you told us your favorite animal species in Borneo, but what about your favorite plant species?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'd have to say my favorite plant species are those dipterocarp trees that we just talked about. When we were in the logging concession, there are a lot of those trees, obviously because that's what they're logging. And you're walking through the forest, and I can't even begin to tell you how big these trees are. It's like the redwoods in California, if you've ever seen them. They're absolutely massive, and they grow perfectly tall and straight. And it's so cool because it looks just like a classic rainforest that I always imagined as a little kid.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. And we have another question from a student named Ryan. Ryan wants to know, why does Borneo have so many species?
Borneo has so many species, especially of plants, was one of those facts our students shared earlier. A lot of the soil in Borneo is volcanic and really, really rich in minerals and nutrients, just kind of like the vitamins that you need to get from your fruits and vegetables. So all of those great things are in the soil, and that helps a lot of vegetation grow, and it promotes a lot of diversity because so many different plants and animal species can evolve there.
And because there is such rich vegetation, we're also curious to know what kinds of food and fresh produce did you eat in Borneo?
So when we were staying in the logging concessions, they bring in a lot of stuff from the cities. So we had these wonderful diet cooks who would cook for us every day, and a typical meal would be always rice. Indonesians eat a lot of rice with either fish or even chicken, what you had one night. And then we also have a lot of bananas that they grow near the logging camp, and one night we got a special treat of watermelon. And these are pretty typical foods in the logging camp. One of our guides also showed us these ferns that we were picking right along the side of the road, and we brought them back to the cooks, and they boiled them down and made a really nice vegetable dish, kind of just like spinach that you all eat at home.
And we have a student named Sarah from Rochester, New York, who wants to know, why do we use sounds instead of sight, smell, touch, or taste to really keep track of biodiversity?
So sound is a really great thing because it's easy to record. It's going on all the time in the forest. And even if you had a bird that was hiding high up in the canopy, or maybe a little mammal that was hiding under some leaves, you might not be able to see them, but if they make a noise, you can hear them. And so we can put recorders out in the forest and then walk away so the animals are not frightened of us and they just go about their day and do their own thing, but we capture those noises and then we get to see that evidence of them in sound.
I'm sure that this also might help us identify previously unknown species. Is that right? And do you know of a case when we may have discovered a new species with sound?
So that's one tricky thing about these recordings. If you have your recording, in order to know that the bird you're hearing is a hornbill, you have to know what a hornbill sounds like. But the good thing is that these recordings, like we said earlier, are permanent records of a place. So maybe we took this recording and there's an undiscovered species on it. We won't know because we don't know what that species sounds like. But maybe in 10 years, another scientist discovers that species and they decide they know what it sounds like. We could go back and listen on our recording and find out, hey, maybe that species was there all along and we didn't even know it.
And when it comes to the species that we do know and we have identified, one student from Hammond Elementary wants to know which animal has the lowest frequency and which has the highest frequency.
So animals with the high frequencies are really going to be insects, at least for frequencies that we can hear. All of that really high-pitched noise you heard was insects, and they have really big cicadas and other types of bugs there. The absolute highest frequency sounds are bats. Most of them communicate in such high frequencies that you wouldn't be able to hear them, and we actually need a special type of recorder. The lower frequency sounds are usually going to be some types of frogs and maybe even mammals, depending on how they vocalize. And there are also some birds that vocalize very low too. Birds can be really high vocalizers or low, depending on the species.
That's really fascinating. And one student named Prisha wants to know, do the roots of the trees in the rainforest grow deep into the volcanic soil or shallow?
It kind of depends on how much soil is there. When we were driving along the roads that are cut into the forest, we saw a lot of places where, because there's rock really close to the surface, there's not a lot of soil. And so the trees' roots grow in shallowly, but then they grow really, really wide along the shallow soil plane so that they still have a good grip because the forest is really slidey and it gets a lot of rain. In other places where there's a little bit more soil in the valleys, the roots will grow down a little bit, but most of the species, they have shallow roots. It's a really good question.
Yeah, those were great questions. And I'm so excited that we've learned so much about the rainforest today. But now that we know so much about it and how important it is to protect forests like Borneo, I think we should start learning about, if people are clearing the land for other purposes, what we risk losing. Do we risk losing the thousands of species that live there? The Nature Conservancy has been working in East Kalimantan's Borneo district to identify forests with high conservation value in hopes of helping the government classify them as protected areas. Justine, can you tell us a little more about that?
Absolutely. So we're using the acoustics to understand how biodiversity looks in different parts of a healthy forest and how it changes with different types of land use, like a palm oil plantation or a logged area. This information will help the Nature Conservancy put together a plan for parts of Borneo to make sure that important areas of the forest, those with really high biodiversity, are protected, and also making sure that people can use the land for other purposes so they can still have jobs and money. It is so crucial for us to make a plan for the amazing rainforest. Without a plan, people won't coordinate, and important biodiverse forest could end up being cut down. If we plan ahead and we make sure to keep the rainforest healthy for the animals that live there, while still allowing people to use the lands to get the resources they need to survive. And remember, the forest role is the lungs of the planet. They're important for everyone around the world.
Yeah, they are very important. But what can the viewers watching at home do? What can we do to help?
There are definitely a few things that you can do. Start by asking your parents to try to buy products that are FSC certified. This means that they came from responsibly managed forests. Think about the notebooks that you use in class. That's a really good place to start. You can also tell your family and friends about palm oil. It's nearly impossible to buy products that don't have palm oil in them, but it's really good to be aware of it. And when you go to the store with your parents, you can keep an eye out for labels that say certified sustainable palm oil. And last but not least, just go outside and listen. It's important to listen to the soundscape of your neighborhood. And you can also go online and listen to acoustic recordings from other rainforests around the world.
Those are a ton of good options to help support the cause. Thanks, Justine. We really appreciate you joining us today and helping us understand why discovering animals through sound is so important. Students, if you want to follow along with Justine's adventures, you can find her stories on the Nature Conservancy's conservation science blog, Cool Green Science, at the URL on your screen.
Thank you so much for having me, class. It's been a great time, and I hope you'll follow me and continue to learn all about the amazing science work that we do at the Nature Conservancy.
We'll certainly follow along. And let's also say thank you and goodbye to the students at Patterson International Elementary School. Thanks for joining us, classroom. And if you'd like to see what I'm up to outside of hosting the amazing virtual field trips, you can visit my website or read some of my health and science articles at the URLs shown on screen and in the teacher's guide. You can also watch for my upcoming appearances on CNN's morning show, New Day. Many thanks to Lowe's for providing support for today's virtual field trip. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. Don't forget to check out the teacher's guide and other resources on our event page or by going to the link on screen for more activities related to this trip. Thanks again for joining us, and until next time, goodbye.